It's Easter.
Okay. Siete se poco. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started. Gentlemen. Good morning, and welcome to the League of Women Voters for Prince George's County Informational Voter Education Forum on Ballot Question D. The purpose of this forum is to encourage the citizens of Prince George's County to learn about the arguments for and against Question D, a proposal to amend the Prince George's County Charter. Question D reads, oh good Lord, I forgot my glasses. To provide for the election of council members by district and at large to change the composition of the county council to a system of 9 district members and 2 at-large members, and to provide that a council member who has been elected to 2 consecutive terms of office as a district member shall not serve more than 2 consecutive terms as an at-large member. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The League works to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in public policy debate and government decision-making. The Prince George's County League of Women Voters has no position regarding Ballot Question D and hosts the event as an educational and informational session to the citizens and voters of Prince George's County. This forum will be held in 3 separate segments. Segment 1, the presenters, who we will introduce in a moment, are going to be allowed 3 minutes of uninterrupted time to give their position, either for or against Question D. Segment 2 will be devoted to allowing questions, written questions from the audience to the invited participants, and they will be given an opportunity to respond to the question in 1 minute. The timekeeper will signal when 15 seconds is over. Segment 3 will consist of members of the audience who belong to organizations or as individuals will be permitted to speak for an allotted 2 minutes per organization or 1 minute per individual. At the close of this session, proponents and opponents, each side will be given 2 minutes each in order to give us closing remarks. The members of our panel today, starting from my left, David Harrington, President of the Prince George's County Chamber of Commerce. Seated next to him is M.H. James Estep, President, CEO of the Greater Prince George's County Business Roundtable. Seated next to him, Doug Edwards, the President of the Coalition of the County Community Organizations. Have I got that correct?
That's correct, although I'm not operating in that capacity today.
Very well. Our opponents are Teresa Dudley, President of the Prince George's County Educators Association. Seated next to Ms. Dudley is Tom DeNogo, former City Council Chair and a tax and zoning attorney. And seated next to Mr. DeNovo is Brandon Cooper, who is from the Prince George's County Republican Central Committee. He is the grassroots chair and the party executive vice president. With that, I'm going to turn to our forum's chair, Tammy Norman, who is going to do the first segment.
Good morning. So we're going to start with our proponents, and we will start with Mr. Harrington. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let me say that, if I may, the Chamber has not taken a formal position on this, but I'm here as, along with my colleagues, as a long-standing public official, very concerned about the structure of our government. And so I start with that in my business transactions of going around the region, what is clear to me is that we are no longer just a local place of business, but we are now a regional place. And as such, then, we need to have experienced players in that region who are able to make relationships and sustain relationships for our own economic development. To me, then, the at-large piece makes sense. It makes sense because then that you have people who are elected by the county that bring to the legislative body a wider perspective on economic development and zoning, and certainly then can leverage that not only in the local policy place, but also in the regional policy place. Of course, then, this question D allows for then those talented legislators who have demonstrated a strong acumen toward policy and relationships to run for these offices. And then again, this makes sense. Term limits does not work. And so while this does not do away with term limits, it allows for us then to have experienced players in the game in a way then that can make the relationships. Let me give you an example. We have other competitors, and those competitors are in Montgomery County and Washington, D.C., who have at-large seats. We do not. And there's one person in particular who is Jack Evans, and I'll raise his name because he's the chair of Ramada, who's been on the D.C. Council for 20 years. Well, this is why then they get the kind of transportation funding that sometimes we cannot get. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Easter?
Good morning. I've lived in Prince George's County practically all of my life. Kids are products of the school system, as I am, and I expect to continue living here and paying my taxes as you do. The county originally had 11 council members when charter government went into effect. We had 5 at-large positions on the county council when it first went into effect. At that time, our population was a little over 600,000, and we had a budget of $250 million. Today, we have a population of nearly 1 million people with a budget of almost $3 billion. Along the way, for political reasons, the size of the council was reduced to 9 districts only. Remember that in the beginning, we had 11 members. 7 out of 9 major jurisdictions in the metropolitan Washington area have some form of at-large seats on their legislative body. The district has 5, Montgomery County has 4. Matters that come before the county council are dealt with by members who are elected by districts, and often those issues are so vital, and we don't have a county-wide perspective that can only be viewed by someone who sees what is important to everyone and not just through a district lens. In fact, on some very, very important projects, I've seen almost absolute gridlock over the years as a result of the system that we currently have. It takes almost 2 years for a person to really become acclimated to that position. You walk into the council position, and the amount of work that you have to immerse yourself in what was supposed to be, what was envisioned as a part-time job, is incredible. The 3 of us that have served in a position, both from the district and as a chair, know what is involved when it comes to the effort. Last but not least, it has been suggested by some of the material that I've read that developers are behind this effort and can control the effort. Just want you to know that the law prevents developers individually, their representatives, cannot contribute to a council candidate or a slate that has a county council member on there. It is against the law to do that. Thank you.
All righty. Mr. Edwards.
Good morning. For the record, again, my name is Douglas Edwards, and I'm the chairman of the Recharge at Large. That's the capacity that I'm here in today. I agree with what has been said, And I absolutely believe it's time for Prince George's County to move into the 21st century. And in order to do that, then we need to look at becoming competitive with the other counties within the region, Montgomery, Fairfax, and also the District of Columbia. And the only way that we can do that is have a level playing field where we're all operating from the same base. I have been in Prince George's County for more than 48 years. I'm a community activist and have been since the mid-50s. I've been involved in the process, the political process, ever since moving to Prince George's County. And one of the things that I've noticed is that we have fallen behind because of the restrictions that we are operating or attempting to operate under since the 80s. It started, I suppose, with TRIM, and of course then with the moving over to 9 districts as opposed to having it large. And what happens is each district become very concerned and primarily concerned about the residents in that district without looking across and looking at Prince George's County as a whole, where the 2 at-large seats would give each representative 3 members as opposed to 1 that they have now. And they would come in a position of neutrality in order to make sure that Prince George's County operates and not just a particular district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dudley.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd first like to thank Nancy Soren, the Maryland State League of Women Voters president who's here today, and the co-presidents Joyce Starks and Atari Mohammed for all of their efforts in putting this forum forward, along with Gloria Johnson. It's a time for Prince George's County to wake up and realize what's really going on. If the Prince George's County Educators Association, which I have the honor of serving with, represents over 9,500 members, and we've done our homework on Question D. We have taken a look at the legislation, and I'll just read what's going to be on the ballot for you really quickly, because as we have this conversation, we need to know what it really says. And it says to provide for the election of council members by district and at large, to change the composition of the county council to a system of 9 district members and 2 at-large members, and to provide that a council member who has been elected to 2 consecutive terms of office as a district member shall not serve more than 2 consecutive terms as an at-large member. So basically what they're asking for is not to be able to serve 2 terms, which the law indicates right now and the charter indicates right now. They want to be able to serve up to 4 terms, which would be 16 years. The limitation of 8 years and 16 years, I will even say that there could possibly be some merit in that. But the concern in Prince George's County is much deeper than that. Because when you look at who is controlling the seats, the money may not be coming from directly to the candidates, but the state senators can donate money they can set up slate committees and still take money from the development community. And the county council, as it sits as the district council, is able to receive those funds for their campaigns. So the process is kind of tainted, but it's up to us as citizens to understand what's really going on. The proposed amendment to change the charter to have the 2 additional seats. Montgomery County has 5 regional assigned seats and 4 at-large. Well, then why don't the members of the county council just simply say, all right, well, some of us will be at-large and some of us will be regional. As opposed to expanding the council, they could just readjust it. Because if they don't have the money, to fully fund our school system, which they didn't fully fund our school system, which made contract negotiations a nightmare for the school system because teachers deserve a fair and decent salary. Why would we do that? Thank you.
And Mr. DeNogo.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for educating the public through this forum. By design, hardly any citizens are aware of Question D just weeks before early vote begins. The proponents of Question D want the voters to be uninformed, so they can basically trick people at the polls with sample ballots indicating a vote for yes. And if you hear about Question D, the proponents of Question D, or at-large seats, want you to get engage in a public policy debate about, is it good or bad, term limits, not term limits, what are we doing? They don't want you to debate, how do we get here? Question D is about much more than simply adding at-large seats. Question D is not the result of a citizen-led movement seeking to change county government. It's actually being opposed by a citizen-led movement to stop what's going on, the No on Question D committee. Question D is really a partnership in which council members try to extend their terms in a high-paid job. Senators and other political elite help anoint the winners of those future at-large seats, and people with business before the county council fund Question D and future at-large campaigns in exchange for favorable treatment. Conspiracy theory, or is it fact? Many of the same politicians and developers did the same thing in 2000 and in 2014. Just 2 years ago, the council tried to modify term limits with a rush bill just before the filing deadline with the support of the political elite, and developers funded the campaign with almost $150,000 to convince people to extend the term limits under Question J. The same thing is happening with Question D. Matter of fact, the treasurer of Recharge at Large was the chair of the 2014 term limit question. Now, if you wanted to talk policy, we should have done that a year ago, 6 months ago. Why did the council basically not engage the public about the structure of county government when it should have? It dropped a stealth bill at the last minute. It held a public hearing on short notice, a hearing in which almost everyone opposed the question, yet the council voted for it in their own interest. The council then buried the at-large charter amendment amongst 5 capital bond bill questions, so the voters have a hard time noticing where it was at. Then the council leadership literally ran to the Democratic Central Committee to try to ram it through on the official Democratic sample ballot. Ms. Dudley helped stop that. So having failed, the council is now working with senators to raise funds that will flood mailboxes with sample ballots. The council members said they wanted a conversation with the public, but now they're refusing to actually appear at forums based on legal advice. There's no conversation. They really don't want the public to be informed about what's going on. If Question D was about the best policy for government structure, there would have been a visible, inclusive process, not a stealth process to sneak something on the ballot and fund the yes side with dollars from people with business before the county council, as happened in 2014.
Thank you. And Mr. Cooper.
Good morning. And thank you again to the League for organizing this event. It really shows this is beyond politics. And just looking at the opposition to this, I mean, this is an issue that goes beyond politics, and proof of it is the fact that you have myself, Vice Chair of the Republican Party, agreeing with the head of the teachers union and a former Democrat chair. I mean, there's not many issues that we often agree on, but it's clear that this goes beyond politics. Our position against this is based in twofold. One would be the circumvention of the county term limits. This is something that voters have voted now 3 times in 24 years. Whenever the county council brings the issue of ending voter term limits, the county residents, Democrat or Republican, voted down. This time it's being brought in the hidden underneath Question D, but it's in the same thing. Even the Washington Post did editorial where they agree in the concept of at-large seats, but they too call this bill out for being a bill for career politicians and not in the best interest of the voters. So again, the discussion of whether at-large seats are better for Prince George's County or not is a discussion to be had, but the question before us right now is whether Question D, as currently written, is in the best interest of residents, and our position is no. The second, and one of the more main reasons for the opposition to Question D, is just the timeliness of it and in the issues that are going on right now in the county. No one would disagree that we have a financial issue, crisis here in the county. So much so that the county council itself established a Blue Ribbon Commission earlier last year, I believe, to examine the budget deficit that we have in the county. Just earlier this year, during their preliminary report, they cited in 2022, if we don't do anything about our financial system right now, we will have over $250 million of a structural deficit in our county budget. And so this bill and the $1 million price tag that it brings per year is just not financially smart. There will be ways to add at-large seats right now to the county council without adding the cost. We could convert some of the existing seats to at-large. So again, it is the financial burden that this is placing on the county, and let's be real, all county government funds come from taxpayers. You know, there is no such thing as government money. Every dime the county spends comes from the pockets of taxpayers, as evident by last year's property tax increase. So last year, they come to us and say the county is broke, they don't have any money, they got to raise the property taxes. And then a year later, they have $1 million laying around to pay for an extra career politician. It just doesn't make sense. And I see a lot of people have talked about how other neighboring counties have this kind of setup. I did a little research myself and found a report by the International City and County Management Association, which looked at them all across the country and saw that of any jurisdiction that has over 200,000 or more people, 45% or more are based on the district system. Only 16% are on at-large, or 38% in a mixed system. So nationally, this is not something that large counties need to survive, and I don't think it's right for Prince George. There's a lot of things that we need in the county, and improved services and community services. More politicians is not one thing we need.
Thank you. At this time, we will allow each side to do 3 minutes of rebuttal per side. You can choose to speak individually, or you can allow and defer and have one of your team members speak the whole 3 minutes. So we'll start with the opponents. Pardon me?
No, we go here. I want 30 seconds. Yeah. Real quickly, and we talk about what the cost of the bill would be. Something that's not talked about yet, but we want to talk about more, is what we could be spending the money on. Just in 2014, the county did a hiring and funding freeze and a 2% reduction in county agencies. That's a reduction in services to residents. And so while we're going through this financial crisis, they're cutting services to residents, they're cutting funding to programs such as Prince George Community College. Some of their increases was deferred because of the budget deficit. Summer youth programs, county food assistance, these programs are being cut while they're adding $1 million to our backs to fund career politicians. So look at where the money could be spent. There's better ways to do this, and I think we need to re-examine this bill. And for the rest of my time.
Okay.
I'll speak for 1 minute. I want to address the claims that were made about what a great thing at-large seats would be. I mean, there's a lot of claims, but they're not based on any fact. They're based on whimsical, well, look what these other folks are doing. You know, they have at-large and they're doing better than us. Well, the issue is not that they have at-large, it's that they have council members who focus on the big picture and do the job they're elected to do. They don't represent special interests. They're not beholden to developers. I served on the council with Mr. Harrington. I remember when Mr. Eastep was on the council. They were wonderful. They were a lot more experienced when they came in than they let on. They did a great job. Mr. Harrington, when I worked with him, was not parochial. My council was not parochial. That was not a problem. We had a countywide perspective. And the problem with keeping experienced folks is one thing we've learned is the more experience you have, the more relationships you have with the wrong people. And you develop relationships that are really not beneficial to the public. And in terms of regional governance and the Washington COG, the statements made on that, I'll just say, are inaccurate in terms of what the benefits are.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that we have bigger issues. Back in December, the federal government, the Congress, reauthorized the Every Student Succeed Act and replaced the No Child Left Behind Act. And our school system is not set up the way that it needs to be set up so that we can be in alignment with Every Student Succeed Act. Give me that $1 million a year in the school system. Give us that so that we can set up community schools. Give us that money so that we can work towards retraining some of our teachers, because right now we're in a crisis situation where we need to culturally train some of the teachers because we're having a really tough time, as you've seen in the media. I just want to once again remind people that this is the sample ballot that you should be using. This is the one that comes from the Board of Elections. All of the rest of them are political paraphernalia.
Thank you. And our proponents, you all will have 3 minutes.
It may sound strange, but I'm agreeing with Mr. Denoga, what he said about Councilman Harrington. Yes, if we had not been hampered by term limits, they would still be there as far as I'm concerned. They did a great job. And so although we are not talking about term limits today, he is absolutely correct. He did a great job, and so did Mr. Hearn. I defer the rest of my time.
Just to respond to a couple of things, I think it's important to point out that, yes, we do have term limits, but maybe we don't have term limits. A council member can actually be in office for 2 terms, sit out 1 term, and then come back and run again. So that the term limits are not absolute, in case you didn't know that. I want to point out again that the original framers of the charter for a county of 250 million people with, $250 million budget with a population of a little over 600,000 thought we needed 11 members with 5 of them being at large. That was only changed for political reasons. I could get into that, but it would just take up a lot of time as to the origin of it. But that's the original charter. So we're really not asking for something earth-shattering here. We're suggesting that that model was not a bad model. I want to reemphasize again that it is against the law to give to a county council candidate, whether they are on a slate or whether they are running individually. So you cannot do that. It is against the law to do that. So a developer or someone related to them in terms of activity cannot do that.
I think our time has expired, correct?
One more minute.
Okay. So obviously I agree with my colleagues, and I do want to emphasize that we already have ethics laws that would prevent slates being formed at this point that was passed by the General Assembly. The question for me is, are we going to try to set up an institution that really is forward-thinking and that creates good governance, or are we going to be governed by skepticism and name calling, frankly? And I think that is what is at stake here. We can fund our schools, and good leadership can fund our schools. We can fund our communities. We can fund, and that's what good leadership can do. And so we are in a budgetary crisis, but budgetary crisis is not solved by simple austerity. They're solved by strong leadership. They're solved by innovation. And so the question, I think, for the public today is: are we going to be led by skepticism, or are we going to be then try to be innovative and change literally the culture, the policy culture of Prince George's County?
Thank you.